Well, let's discuss the budget with Randy Boissonnault. He's the Associate Minister of Finance and the Minister of Tourism for Canada. Mr. Boissonnault, good to see you again. Thanks for taking time to speak with me this evening.
Thanks very much, Peter.
The thrust of this budget is to make life more affordable for Canadians. So what I want to know is, how will they know it's working? How will this budget take effect and have people go, hey, I just realized my life's getting more affordable?
It's a great question, Peter, and it's entirely our intention to make life more affordable for Canadians. And I guess an example that I would use is something that happened to me on the doors maybe 2 weeks ago in my own riding of Edmonton Centre. I met Graham and Claire, and I came up to the door, and their little daughter, Molly, was there. And I said, how are things going? And they said, Randy, the childcare thing is magical. Like, Claire's back at work and Molly's having a great time and we're saving thousands of dollars. We didn't think it could get done this fast, and it's really changed our lives. And so those are the kind of things that I want to hear. When I talk to young moms and they tell me that the Canada Child Benefit is helping them make ends meet, and that benefit is indexed to inflation, that's also an example of how this budget is responding to some of the pressures that Canadians are facing. I think, Peter, also people telling us that they're able to get their first home, that they're going to take advantage of that first-time homebuyers incentive. It's like an RSP for your home. It's tax-free in, tax-free out, $40,000, which takes a big chunk out of your down payment on your first home. So that's the kind of things that I think people will say.
Let's talk about that. All
Sure.
the new measures for home buyers to help them buy homes, according to a lot of economists, could actually push up the rate of inflation. What do you say to that?
Well, I think it's really clear, and you've heard the Deputy Prime Minister say this, and I've said this in the House of Commons many times, that inflation in Canada is not a made-in-Canada solution. We are facing it, and that's why we're working hard to make life more affordable. But if you take a look at the tragic war in Ukraine started by Russia, if you take a look at the energy shocks, the fact that China still has a zero COVID policy and that's gumming up our supply chains, those are at the root of inflation. And what I do know is that if we actually can get people into housing, into homes, and they're able to have jobs, then those are two of the most important economic pillars that any of us could want. And if you take a look at the rapid housing program, Peter, those are examples of houses that have been, by the time from the announcement to when people move in, is less than 12 months. I know, because I've got two of them in my own riding. Those are the kind of success stories that I think are going to come out of this expanded, doubling of new home buys over new home builds over the next 10 years.
According to the budget numbers, the housing supply measures could create 800,000 homes over the terms of the investments, but the country needs double that. So how will you address that ongoing shortage?
Well, I think this is where some of the measures, like making sure that we don't have the foreign home buyers in, and we're going to use our fiscal weight as a federal government to work with municipalities to make sure that they're speeding up the permitting process, that they're actually making more land available, that they're actually densifying where they need to, and that working with municipalities directly and making sure that they understand that if they want the funding, they've got to speed up that process will also help. And the Deputy Prime Minister was very clear on this, and we've been clear on this. The government alone isn't going to solve this issue, and so it's a community issue, it's a business issue, and it's a government issue, and that's why I'm very excited to see such an investment in co-ops as part of Budget 2022.
This is described as a growth budget, but economists aren't rushing to change any growth projections right now because of what they've seen today. So how
Sure.
will that growth happen?
Well, look, the economists they're not going to predict growth, Peter. They're only going to measure it once it's happened. That's the way the economists do it, is they look in the rearview mirror. But I can tell you everything from the Canadian Innovation Agency that we're talking about with $1 billion. The Canada Growth Fund is a serious fund, capitalized at $15 billion, to make sure that we take $3 for every $1 we're putting in as a federal government, so a $60 billion fund to make sure that we can have the kind of investments in clean and renewable technologies. The Royal Bank itself has said that we need about $150 billion in investment to get to net zero each year to 2050, and the government doesn't have that much money, but we can actually crowd that kind of money in from a financial perspective. That's a great thing. And if there's any business people watching, entrepreneurs, we're going to change the rule that your taxes go up when you get to $15 million in size to $50 million, because we want Canadian companies with great IP, great know-how to be able to scale and grow and stay right here in Canada.
You talked about the Canada Growth Fund. That's newly created in this budget. it feels a lot like Son of the Infrastructure Bank, which didn't deliver as promised. So how will this be any different?
Well, I think, and look, I'm in finance, and I was in the government when we passed this early in our first mandate. I think the initial parameters of the Canada Infrastructure Bank were a bit narrow. What the growth fund is very clearly indicating, it's not beholden to infrastructure projects. This is actually working with companies that are planning to set up shop here, or Canadian technologies that want to scale and help on our pathway to net zero. And the fact that we're going to make investments, hold them, and have that be part of the asset base of Canada is a really smart strategy. We see it happening in other countries, and we want to make sure that we're on the leading edge of making sure that those investments happen here in Canada.
All right. Associate Minister of Finance, Randy Boissonnault, thank you for your time tonight, sir. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Peter.